I'll just start it. Yeah, in today's class, we will discuss about the various steps involved in the implementation as well as in testing and support of Microsoft Dynamics. So how would it start and how would it end? So, and what are the various steps involved in between, and what would people usually do in a project? So we'll discuss that part. Most of it would be theoretical, but it is a very important question in the sake of interview, as well as for you to understand about the overview how a project will be handled, or how people combine together to work in a project, and what are their agendas, or how would they segregate their work and different steps involved. So I'll just explain you deeply. So we can call it as implementation methodology. Call it as, so I'll just increase the font in case. Right. So how many of you are aware of the software implementation, or how clients would be, or I mean, how projects handled, or how different people in a team combine to develop a software or install a software for a client? Anyone? Okay. So this is our motto to discuss. Let's see. There were quite few methods in implementation of a project. So mostly the pattern will be the same. The steps followed are the same, but the methodology will differ. So we'll see first how many different types of methods we have in implementation of Dynamics. What are the most prominent methods that clients would opt to follow, or sorry, the consultant companies would opt to follow to install Dynamics for clients. So I would say one as, sorry, Agile methodology, and the second one is waterfall methodology. Is anyone aware of what is Agile methodology? No? Any basic idea of what is Agile methodology? Well, let me take it over. So Agile methodology is a process where multiple teams work for a single project. So each team might not have connection to each other, but they will be working for a single client, but they don't know each other. They might be also from a different companies. Suppose that, let us assume. So in Microsoft Dynamics, there are finance part, supply chain part, and production part. Okay, or retail part also is there. There are quite few different modules. So production part will be handled by one particular consultant group or belonging to a company, and finance and operations will be handled by another consultant group, which are in uh, which are working for another company, and developments or the technical aspects in the project will be uh, taken over by another team or handled by another team which is working for a different company. So client will be having partnership or agreement with all these companies. So I would say agreement, or kind of deal that they have to support these activities. So they have this agreement with multiple companies, not a single company, and they'll get the things done with various groups. So each group does not have communication with each other until and unless it is necessary. Or if somebody is dependent on someone, client would connect a bridge call to make each other talk, or to make each other understand, or to collaborate. So that's what happens in Agile methodology. These kind of methodology, this type of methodology is usually followed by very big projects, which is very huge and would take a lot of time. So it would generally be segregated and given to the prominent partners or consultants in the industry who are famous for one particular module, or who are famous with the technical aspects will be given the technical side. So if the client is rich enough, likes to spend more, generally would follow the agile methodology. So got some clarity about what is agile methodology. Do you have any confusion in this? If I would explain with an example, suppose that so there is some client called Reliance. So Reliance would opt to get Microsoft Dynamics installed for their business, recording their business activities. So Reliance would approach Infosys as well as PwC as well as Accenture. So Infosys would be implementing all the functional aspects. Okay. Then the technical aspects will be handled by Accenture, and PwC will be working on the retail part of Reliance project. So three different companies and consultants from three different companies and three different teams, I would say, will work together for this particular project. So they will work on the assignment that were given to you, and they will work on the development that they have to do. They don't involve in the other team's work or other company team's work. But at times when they have to collaborate, at one point when they have to combine everything that they have developed, so that would be the situation when they would generally talk, or when something is dependent on someone, so then they would talk normally. If in case of developments, so Infosys company team would develop a document and send it to Accenture team for technical developments. So in that case, for further clarification, they might collaborate and talk. Otherwise, so they would work individually. So that's about agile methodology. So one would definitely do not have any connection with the other team usually, and they don't follow they have their own team assignments and agenda of work, but they don't involve into the others' work. So that is about agile methodology. Coming to waterfall methodology, it's simple. It's a small team. It's a single team of one company who would work on a project. So it's the same one team from Infosys would install everything for Reliance. So they only do the functional thing. They'll do the technical thing as well as they'll also work on the retail part if there is any. So if whatever the project, whatever the aspects of project are there, so the single team with multiple different talents or skilled consultants. Would say finance consultants plus technical consultants plus retail consultants, whoever they are. So all of them will be framed as a single team. So they will work together because they all belonging to same company and they're working for the same project. So in in view, they know the complete overview of the project. But in agile methodology, that team knows only that team's assignments. They don't know about others part or other companies team's part. So in waterfall methodology, generally they know everything in the project, all the steps involved, and they will get their work only when the other one completes. It's a step-by-step process they will follow generally. But in agile methodology, they'll start parallelly. All of them will start parallelly and work. Coming to waterfall methodology, they'll go step by step, one after other, and they are lot dependent on each other to complete the project. So that's the whole difference between these two methodologies. 1 second, guys, 1 second, please. I'm so sorry for that. Yeah, so we were discussing about these two methodologies like agile and waterfall and what is the kind of difference we have. So this would generally be opted by medium and small scale clients who would not looking to spend so much and who would be dependent on a single partner company or a consultant company for installation of their things. So they both of them will have their own complexities, limitations as well as benefits. But I would preferably say waterfall methodology is quite good and simple. But for big clients, since they have a lot of work to do, a single team can't do it. So they go for multiple teams and look for the masters in the market for that particular aspect of project or that particular development. So do you guys got the point about what is agile methodology and what is waterfall methodology? Any doubts would be asked by name in case. Satya, any doubts?
No, JP.
Okay. Vision, do you have any doubts? Seems like he's on mute. Or anyone else, if you have any doubts, yes, please put it up. Or else you note down them and we can discuss at the end of the class too. We'll spare some time at the end of the class. Aware of this methodology, wonderful. Well, there is also one more methodology. I'll just say it. Sure step methodology we have. So this, I would say, kind of methodology, yet is the process generally, I would say. This is the process that is followed in completion of a project, not only in Dynamics, but also in any software project. They will now usually follow this sure step methodology. Most of the ERP implementation projects would follow these steps of methodology. It's the same. I mean, I would say the points we discuss here, then the two-step methodology will be the same in the waterfall as well as in other agile methodology too. But I mean, we have a separate name for it as a two-step methodology. It's a it's a comprehensive client engagement methodology normally to how uh, how to engage with clients and how to start the project and various steps involved. So will be discussed now in this sure step methodology. We'll see how we would go. So whenever a client decides that he would need to get the product or a particular ERP get installed for him, so he would do some analysis in the market. So he would compare with few ERPs that are available in the market. So he would look into what kind of ERP would be better for his business or for the segment of business. See, for retail, there would be a prominent ERP in the market. So if it's a retail company or it is a retail company, they would opt for that prominent ERP in the market. Someone's seems like someone joined now. 1 second. Yeah, thank you. So I was saying, like, if client would go for some analysis, so how would he analyze what is perfect fit for his business or fit ERP for his business? So he would go for market reviews, he would go for the trend, or he would go for the lot of aspects to compare, like how what is the pricing, how the support is being given by the core developer of the ERP, and how much user friendly it is, and how it fits into his business, and what kind of easy solutions does he or his business users might have in the TRP. So he would do a proper analysis. So once after doing analysis, he would also look for, if he would decide one ERP to get it installed. Let us assume that he had decided that he would get Dynamics installed for his business process. So he might be using Tally, or he might be using QuickBooks, or he might be using SAP or any other ERP earlier, or he might not be using any ERP yet. So he would want to shift into a ERP. In that case, yeah, once after doing analysis, and if he would fix that, he would get the Dynamics installed. He would look into the market for someone who would install it for him, the process. So he might not be totally aware of, or the client might not be totally aware of how it gets installed, or what is the charge of different companies. And they would also look for vendors. Vendors means or the consultant companies who would install it for them. So they look into various aspects of rating for this particular company who can install, or the quality of consultants they have, the other clients review, as well as how much they are charging, how much time they are taking to implement the project. So they would again call for quotations kind of. So the sales people normally in the consultant company, like would say like Accenture or Wipro, so would go for presenting the product as well as the quality of their implementation or their teams. They would just promote themselves to the client so that they would get that project into their pipeline, and it's an earning for the company too, right? So the pre-sales team actually works on it. So I would say pre-sales activities will be done. So in what happens in pre-sales is that, it's an introduction about the tool, about the company, about their pricing, about their quality of implementation, then cost estimation, budget, timelines. There will be all of them. I'll just write down them so that you will understand. So contract heading, cost estimation, project, then budget. So both of them would be same, but slight difference. Timelines, phases of project. It can be a single phase project or multiple phase project. Kind of resources that they are available. All of them are certified or not means all of them are experienced or not. How many projects they have worked previously. So client also would look into these aspects because they want the best of their consultants to work for their project. There are any other agreements, so they will also go for the other agreements. After all, everything is cleared, they'll get the contract signed. So this would be the very first point happening in the project or in the beginning of the project. So the pre-sales team of a company or a consultant company would reach to the client and explain about their various qualities or the resources they have and their name in the market about installation of Dynamics for various other clients. So they would promote everything and get the client persuaded so that he would give a project for them to work on, so which is eventually money for the company. So this is what happens in the first point. Any confusion in this, or someone have any doubt in this part? So there will be a separate pre-sales team or a sales team or a marketing team in every company who would generally approach clients. So they will also take someone who is having good Dynamics knowledge and approach so that they can easily convince the client. So after this, we have one more point, or the one more next step would be a normal kickoff meeting. So kickoff meeting would normally be an initial meetup. Between. It is also called as business in normal terms, client and consultant, I would say. Yeah. So a good bracket for this. Yeah. So if at all once a contract gets signed, suppose that we're taking the example of Reliance and Infosys. Yeah. Reliance approaches or Infosys approaches Reliance and explains about the achievements of Infosys in the implementation of Dynamics and all, and will get the project from Reliance. So Reliance will agree to get it installed with Infosys. Then the contract will get signed between Infosys and Reliance, and after all the pricing and everything is done and the timelines and all the details said here are agreed. So accordingly, they will sign the contract. Once the contract is signed, so Infosys would fix a team who would be working on to this Reliance project or working for this client Reliance. So the set of consultants, or not mostly the set of all the consultants, so at least the heads of the consultants in the project, like the architects or the senior consultants or the team leads or the delivery managers who would be there in the project, would would go ahead for a kickoff meeting to introduce themselves. So they introduce themselves to the client as well as understand about client and their business process. So that would be the initial kickoff meeting. Just a basic introduction of each other, and they will deeply discuss about what is the business flow of the client. I mean, what steps they have in business normally, and different activities they have. What are they looking for in Dynamics? The client will have a better analysis. He would, once he step into this particular ERP or looks for this ERP, he would compare his existing ERP with multiple ERPs and he would do his analysis. So he would be having an idea in his mind about why he is going to opt Dynamics and what is he looking for to be developed or to be, how he would want to run his business process on Dynamics. So he would have better idea. So everything will be presented to the consultants team or the heads of the consulting team in this particular meeting. So this meeting is really important. Also, would say client would properly explain the expectations of what they are looking in this particular team. So what are their agreements or expectations on timely basis, what they are looking to complete in timely manner. So they would explain everything here in this particular meetup. So this would be the initial kick-off start of the meeting. To add more in this meeting, generally they would also discuss about the gatherings of requirements. So consultants would require the business gatherings from the requirements to be gathered from the client, so that they would do some analysis. And they would also discuss about the legacy system. Legacy system is the term. Legacy system is nothing but the previous ERP that the client is using, like Tally or QuickBooks or any other ERP that he's using currently. Now he's going to opt for Dynamics, right? So in this process, so the one that is they are previously following or using is called as legacy system. So they would have this comparison between the legacy system to Dynamics. So why they are shifting from legacy to Dynamics is what they're newly looking into Dynamics, what they have, or understanding the business process and trying to understand what is less in Dynamics or what has to be developed. So once if they understand their structure of the business as well as the size of the project, they can mobilize resources, or they might understand how many people we might need in this team for implementing this project, how many functional people we need, how many technical people we need, how can we construct a team for this client. So they might have a team, but still they'll go with correct numbers, or they'll go with the experience as well as they'll go with the capability of the consultants. So depending on the project and the client's particularity, so everything will be restructured. In this particular meeting only, everything will be understood. So that's what we call as kickoff meeting. Then the third step, once after everything is clear and the discussions are done, so they'll start gathering the requirements. Requirement gathering is the next step. So what is requirement gathering? So what exactly is requirement gathering is that, so we have to implement a project for the client. Assume that we are on the side of client consultant, so we have to implement a project for the client. So we have roughly understood in this meeting what is the business flow and the process, but still it involves various steps, like they might use general ledger, they might use cash and bank management, they might use accounts payable, I mean the procurement, as well as on the sales side, what are the different activities they have. If at all inventory management, production are also involved, what are the different steps they have in this process as well. Understanding that or roughly or talking about it roughly doesn't work. So you have to properly gather the requirements. What are the different activities they are doing in one particular module? Assume that let me take the cash and bank management module. So okay, what kind of transactions they have? What are the different methods of payments or receipts they are using? And how often they are reconciling their bank statements? What is the process that they are following for reconciliation of documents or the bank statements? And how they are managing their bank balances, or they're looking for any other controls in the bank accounts. So how they're following it in the legacy system. Legacy system in the sense, I mean, in the previous system or the previous ERP, how they're following it. So you would note down all these valid points and you will make a document of it. So if you should not miss anything, even if it's a small thing, you have to notice and record everything. So who would give you these requirements, or if you want to gather these requirements, who would generally give you these requirements? So the client, the people from the client side or the business people would generally give you these requirements. So they have their heads for various departments, right? So for the cash department, for other departments they have. So they would involve in explaining their business flow in depth and the steps in depth, every minute point, so that the consultant would get a good clarity of what to implement. So we as a consultants would be very careful enough and particular enough to know each and every point as well as the minute points in the requirement gathering process. And you would document everything. The gathered requirements are documented properly, either module wise or all the requirements will be documented in a single document as well. So which we would generally call as this one. After requirement gathering, preparation of documents. So there are quite few documents like FRD, FTD, TDD. I would say as dissolution documents. So the most important one in this step is this one, FRD, which would usually call as functional requirement document. So FRD is generally called as functional requirement document. So being a functional consultant, so you would understand the business flow or the process in various modules. So you would document everything, or the functional requirement that they're looking in Dynamics, you would document everything. So that document is called as FRD, or the functional requirement document, which is the most important document in terms of project to move ahead or to start with the project. So this is the very first document that we would prepare, and very important document. So every requirement of the client is generally gathered and documented properly. And also once after getting documented, you would have to show it for a review for the client if at all we have missed anything or anything has to be added. So once after everything is in place or completed the documentation, you have to get it signed duly from the client or get agreed from the client. So that why we agree means, so in today we have certain requirements for the client and we will start implementing it. Tomorrow, if we did not get it signed or duly agreed, a client will come back and say this is not what we said. We have said something else, or we might need something else, and this is not what we are actually looking for. In that case, so it's a flop again. So if you present everything to them and get it reviewed once again and get it signed, so that would be the kind of contract for the project, or you would say like an agreement for the project to start, and there won't be any changes made until and unless it is said to be a change. Or the client would come up and say, yeah, we have told it previously that we might need it in this way, but we might need it in this way now. So can you please rearrange it in the document, or can you please look for this particular requirement of us rather than the earlier one. So if they would request in that way, and depending upon the complexities of that or the time that it would take, you will again reframe the time again. So you will have your own timelines, right? So according to that particular requirement, it can be a easy requirement or a hard requirement. So accordingly, we'll reframe your timelines as well as a team. So that's what happens in this functional requirement gathering process. Understood this step, or does anybody have any confusion about this?
No, understood.
Okay, wonderful. Then the next step, analysis. So I would say analysis. So what is analysis? So analysis is a general term, but uh, what kind of analysis can be done here in this situation at this step is one we have to understand. So functional requirements are gathered from the client, correct? So everything is in place and documented properly. Now you have to do some analysis about out of these functional requirements that you gathered, or out of these requirements of the client, how many will fit into Dynamics? For which particular processes we can provide solution in Dynamics? For most of the business activities of the client or the requirements of the client, we can provide solution in Dynamics. Dynamics does provide say diversified options to install everything or to work on most of the business aspects. But there can be chances that the requirement of the client cannot be fit into Dynamics or is not available in Dynamics as a standard process. Then what we would do? If we do not have something, we have to develop it or correct, develop it or get it framed or designed. So that's what happens in this analysis part. Generally, there are quite few steps like analysis, design, develop, test, like this. So we'll discuss all of them. So first, let us discuss about this part of analysis. Sorry. Analyze. So it should be this one. If requirements fit into dynamics, or if there are any additional developments required. So this particular analysis is also called as gap fit analysis or fit gap analysis. So anything, you can call it by any name, gap fit or fit gap. So it generally indicates the same. So gap fit. So whatever the requirements of the client that are fitting into Dynamics is under fit. So whatever that does not fit into Dynamics will be under gap. So we will usually say there is a gap between client's requirements and Dynamics solution. So it's not exactly meeting the client requirement. So we might have to develop something or change the design of Dynamics according to the requirement of the client. So that's what we call as gap fit analysis. So in this particular analysis, we will generally analyze the same. So out of the requirements, what would generally fit into Dynamics and what have a gap or what doesn't really fit into Dynamics. So that's what we call as gap fit analysis. This part is also very important in a project, understanding the gaps and fits. So generally, if it is a fit, you can directly implement or configure it in Dynamics. If it's not a fit and if it is a gap or if you identify a gap, how to fix it or how to go with it is the next step we will discuss. So you're clear, right, about this point? Gap fit analysis, all of you. Would at least need one acknowledgement. Excuse me.
Yes, I'm aware, GP.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
So let's go with the next step. I'll just take it down. Okay, design. So you have analyzed and you have identified some gaps. So fittings, yes, as I told you, you can directly configure in Dynamics if it fits. If it doesn't, you have to go with, you have identified a gap and you have to find a solution or a kind of design which would generally fits the client's business process. Before going for some developing something, you would generally look for the workarounds in Dynamics. So it may not be a standard process in Dynamics, but there can be a possible workaround for achieving that situation or that requirement or fitting that requirement into Dynamics. So these workarounds, if they are user friendly, client would go with it rather than going for development. Client would say that, yeah, this is convenient enough, we can use this. If client agreed with that or convenient with that workaround, yeah, you can go with that, no problem. If it's not, if it is not convenient or if the workaround is also not feasible for the client or it's not, client is not so much happy, then you have to go for your design and development. So that would be the next step. What will be a design? So design is generally, if you have to develop something, you should have a basic idea of how you want to develop or how it should look like once it is developed. So that's what will be designed. Suppose client want a report to be customized or he needs a kind of report which brings some detailed data about something. But that kind of standard report is not provided by Dynamics or we don't have such report in Dynamics. So in that case, we might have to design a report and a place in a position where we can place this menu in a kind of module. Suppose if the report belongs to accounts payable module, we'll get it fit into accounts payable module itself, the menu. And what kind of details the report have to bring up. So how the report design should look like, as well as what are the different options that the user have while he was running the report, while he have to run the report. So what kind of controls he would have, as well as different sortings, filters sorting. So how they should look like and how this menu would be looking like. So this will be designed not only with in the example of report, it can be any other business process other than report, or if particular field or a journal which has to be customized. So in that case, we have to design. So who would design this process, or who would design how it should look like, or if it look like this, it would be convenient, or system should be reframed like this, or has to be developed like this. Who would generally do these designs? Any idea, anyone?
The software development team, SDLC process.
Yeah. So the developers would generally work once after the design is done or given a design. So they would generally look into it. But these are the key people who would say system architects. So they play a key role from the beginning itself. But in this area, they would generally have more hands-on. So understanding the dynamics as well as preparing a design. These people, system architects, we generally call in the project. So system architect generally doesn't get confined to only this particular part. They would work generally in many projects starting from the beginning. They just give a path or way to follow or to complete the project. But here in this aspect, let's discuss that it could be a system architect or it can be some senior consultant. If it is an easy design, so or if you understand the design, you can also explain, or if you understand the requirement, you can also say that this design should look like this, so it would be better for the client. So you would have a basic idea. In the same way, the system architect does really work on the same process, or will be always working on a kind of designs and development. So they will have better idea about how it should look like. So if you understand the functionalities of Dynamics in how other reports are being generated, or how the parallel process or the same kind of process in a different module is being works, so you can bring up the same kind of design. You can copy the design and place it here in Dynamics as it is. I mean, you can copy the design from that particular process template or menu, and you can add the same here, the design. But there are situations where you have to design it in self or customize it according to the requirement of the client, maybe not following the same kind of design we have in other module. So generally they'll follow the same kind of design or pattern so that it would be convenient. So it wouldn't look clumsy if they go with the same pattern. It will be the same in all the modules, or the process will be the same. So the kind of filters they have in a generating a report will look like same. If at all they develop the report also, the filters would look like same because they just copy the design or the way it looks from the other module or other report. So that would generally be done by the system architects. So in this place, if the design is being finalized, there comes a document called as FDD. So it's also called as functional design document. So once if a design is finalized that it has to be done, so they would look into various aspects. Firstly, does it really suitable in Dynamics or not? If it doesn't suits in Dynamics, they will not work on it. They will look for another alternative. If they are 100% sure that it works on Dynamics or it suits to Dynamics, they would work with the design. So how it should look like and key elements of this design. Firstly, how the user interface should look like. What are the different options that the user should have once he would start this process, or suppose let's take the example of a report only. Once he would run the report, what are the different where it should be located first? Secondly, which kind of users would have access to this report? Thirdly, different menus or parameters available for running this report. And next, the very important is from which particular table or area data should be extracted into this report. So initial one was the design of the menu or the placing of the report or the customized report. The second one is the core, from where it should extract the data or pull the data and frame a report. So if at all a report has to be constructed or reframed, it should pull out some data. So the report generally represent the data. So it should pull out some data. So from where, which table it should pull the data, from which module, and what are the different data things that this report should pull up according to the given parameters in the initial page. So this again will be designed or written down in the document. In the functional document, everything will be written clearly. Then once after report is generated, how the report look should be, on how it should look like, what should be the size of the report, what are the different columns and rows that the report should have, what should be at the top, the headings, as well as in the bottom, what it should look like. Does it need to show totals, or if the report is having multiple pages, so how it should show? Can we go for each page, or does it shows in line or page by page, like that you can move to next, like that. So this will be planned. I mean, the result will be planned. The result of this outcome of this particular design will be planned too in the FDD. So starting from the basic place where it has to be placed to the and to the outcome of the design. So everything will be planned in this document. So there can be, if there are multiple developments or multiple customizations to be done in Dynamics for the client, so there will be multiple FDDs or multiple design documents. Okay. So also along with the design, so they would have quite few other steps in this FDD, like they'll also go write down the test cases or the basic test cases. So test cases means once if it is designed and developed and deployed into Dynamics, how we need to test if it is working or not. Is it if it is working according to the given design or expectation or not? So if we run those particular test cases, so you will understand the result of that test case will indicate that this particular development is a pass or fail. Pass means if it qualifies in test, it is pass. If it doesn't, it will fail, and they might have to fix it or redevelop it. So these few test cases will be written by the architects themselves or the people who would generally would generally frame this FDD or write down this FDD. They only will write down the test case as well. Not just that, but yeah, there it ends the FDD part. So along with FDD, we have another document called as TDD, technical design document. So what all you have prepared here in FDD or written down in FDD, generally a functional side or the functional aspects of how a design should look like or how a new customization should look like and what should be the outcome of it. But technically there can be a different design, or if a technical person who have to develop this, so he might be having different process to develop this. So according to the requirement that were mentioned in the FDD, he would also restructure or prepare his own TDD, technical design document. So in order to develop these functional aspects, so what are the technical codes that has to be used, and to design a report, what are the things that has to be kept in mind or various steps involved. So all those things will be documented. The technical design will be documented here in the TDD. Again, this also will be generally signed or shown to the client. So with the client's help only, they'll prepare these documents, but also once after completion, they'll again get it approved from the client so that there won't be any confusions later. As I told you previously, like this is not the design we are looking for. If the client says, then done. So you have done everything and developed and invested time and resources. But at the end, if client says this is not the design we are looking for, then it's a trouble. So initially you will get it agreed when you go for development. So once after documenting everything, you'll generally get the approval of the client. Documenting this is important because it acts as a route map for the development, as well as once it is developed and deployed into Dynamics, and if the client is using, and assume that it is successful and they are using it. If someone newly joins into the team, or if someone newly joins into the client's process as a consultant, so how we would understand that particular design. So how it's a new feature in Dynamics, right? Or it's a new development in Dynamics. You don't have any idea about what it is. So going through these documents only, he would have that idea. How exactly it is developed, what from where, which areas it is pulling the data, how exactly is the design be like, technical aspects involved behind it, what kind of code it is being, what kind of code is handling this particular customization. So everything they will understand only when they look into these documents. So documenting them clearly is very important. So as I told you, not only a route map, but also a overview, or for someone who would newly join into the team. Maybe later in future also it would help for the client even. So that would be all about the FDDs, the design part. Clear, all of you? Any doubts in this?
Yeah, it's clear, Rajiv.
Okay, thank you. Then the next step would be development. Development would be nothing but the fixed designs or documented designs. Will be developed or customized. Sorry. Documented designs will be developed or customized in Dynamics. This will be the next step. So what all we have discussed previously, the design, everything, once after getting duly approved from the client, the technical people or the developers would work on it to develop it. So that would be the next step of it, development. Then the 8th step, let's say, testing. So design is done, development is done. So how we will understand if it is working fine or not? So development is done, and let's say that deployment after development. So once it is developed in an environment, it will be deployed. So once the deployment is done, we can look the designed features or the according to the document will be available now in Dynamics in that particular place where it is designed to be located at. So accordingly, we will go and navigate and we will run it. But how we will understand if it is working fine or not? So it can be done only by testing. So if we test it properly, then we will understand if it is working according to the design and expectations, or is there any gaps or lacks in this particular development. So for this we have test cases to run. So this process generally whoever does the design will generally give a rough test case scenarios. So you run this and you will understand if it is working or not. Other than that, there will be quite many test cases that we can prepare by ourselves. Understanding the design, we can write down the test cases and we can run the process according to the test cases that we have written down. So what happens in test? What happens when you test it and if it passes, and what happens in test if it fails? So if it qualifies the test and all the test cases, then it's a very good development. So you can move ahead with deploying it into the other environment or the main environment. So we'll discuss different environments next point or the other point. Okay. After that design fails, or if in any test case fails, there are 15 test cases, 14 of them are giving proper results. Testing 14 of them will give proper results. So one test, the development failed or the design failed in one test. So in that case, if it fails anytime, if it is major and it has to be fixed, you will log a bug to the development team. Whoever developed it, you will log a bug to them saying that it is failing here. So they will try to understand what is the technical aspect that it is making it fail. After that, they will fix that particular code, and later they'll say that this is being fixed. You can try it once again or give a try it once again. So you have to test all the 15 cases once again, not the single case, because once something is changed, there can be situation like the test case that failed earlier might pass now, but the remaining might fail again because of that particular minor change in the code. So you have to test it multiple times with giving different criteria and assigning different parameters. You have to test it rigorously. Once it qualifies test, you will move it into the main environment. So, or you can also show it to the client only when it passes. So these steps are involved in testing, right? Test cases, testing the development, bug fixtures, if any. So everything will be there in this 8th point, testing. Clear this, all of you? Any confusion in this? Okay, looks like clear. So here we have one more main test. Let us assume that the whatever that fits into Dynamics are configured, whatever that doesn't fit or all are customized. So these kind of designs, if there are multiple, all of them are designed, duly tested, everything qualified in test, and everything is being deployed into Dynamics. So the everything whatever is customized, it's customized like a package. So all the packages will be deployed into the main environment. So once it is deployed, you have to do one more test. So why do we do this one more test means you will test everything in Dynamics, all the business activities of the client, if the flow is working perfectly or not, everything is in place according to you. But only once you test it, you will understand what is being what is lacking or what is working good or what isn't. You will understand only when you do a main test. So you also does some customization and brought all those packages or moved that code into the new environment or a fresh standard environment. So there are situations like because of the deployments you have done or the new code that is moved into Dynamics, chances that the standard processes might fail sometimes or would throw up some bugs because of the clash of codes in the backend or situations like that. So if you have to identify such things, you have to do this main test once after every deployment is done. Okay, so this is very important. If it fails, you will understand what are the points where it is failing and accordingly you will fix it. If it doesn't fail or if it qualifies in everything and if everything is fair, then you will give it for UAT. So also called as user acceptance test. So here you have done testing. So if you feel that everything is fair enough, you will give it to the client to test it. So that's what we call as UAT or user acceptance test. Client side users generally we will in the meanwhile we will also give training to the users. We'll prepare user manuals how they have to work on. I'll also add it as a point of user manuals training business users on Dynamics. So you will train them how they have to work on Dynamics. The business side users or the end users. Once you train them, then once you submit this particular link or give access to this business users, they would go for testing. So they know better about their business process, how much capacity they have on a regular basis, what kind of journals they do and all. So they would also have an experience as well as it's a kind of testing too. So they would also report some points like for our business requirement, this should be the flow and here we have something lacking. So how to achieve this, how to achieve that they might have a kind of situation if they would do this testing. So the business side people will do testing here in UAT and you as a consultant have to support them or you have to guide them through how they have to test it or how which process works. You know, you usually give your training here and user manuals also accordingly they will test, but in case if they need some assistance you should be available because you have already submitted the project right here for testing, so you are the one who is answerable for it. So the one who designed or the one who developed would be answerable at this situation if it fails again, or the one who tested is also answerable if it fails again here. If it fails again here, they will ask why it didn't fail here, who is the one who tested this particular scenario and who had made it qualified. So they will look back. So that is why testing here as well as testing here at this point and at this point is very important. Only if it is how you are 100% sure that it is qualified, you will move to client for testing. So that's the 11th point. And we have go live. So what is go live? Go live is nothing but you will once if everything user acceptance test also qualifies and client would like to start their business proceedings on Dynamics from certain date. Assume that he'll try to start it from November 1st. So until November 1st, he might be working on or until September the 30, October 31st, he might be working on legacy system or the previous ERP. So all the data that you have there, the accounting numbers, the balances for each accounts, as well as the inventory details, and everything has to be moved into this new system, Dynamics. So because they can't start with zero, right? Again, they have to have their own numbers, the same existing numbers until that period. From the new month, again, they'll have their own operations which will be recorded on daily basis. But to support that, they should have this historical data in place. So this go live it generally involves this bringing all the historical data and keeping everything in place so that by the time client would go for live or try to use Dynamics or in the main environment or in the main we'll say different environments I'll explain you. So in the production environment, you will have everything, you will make sure that everything is in place, like the master data of various details like fixed assets, vendors, customers, as well as their balances and the inventory details, as well as the details of the warehouse and the sites where the inventory is located in. So everything, you will make a proper plan for bringing all this historical data into Dynamics. And once it is brought into Dynamics and everything is reconciled properly and feels like everything is in place, then client would start recording his day-to-day operations from that particular time that you have decided to. So that's what we have in Go Live. And in Go Live also we have some support to do. In Go Live, we have to make the client understand that this is what we have bought. This is exactly how it looks like. So initially they don't really have a good idea about how the historical balance are brought up, how they would reflect in various modules. So you have to keep explaining them. So that's what we have in Go Live. So make client comfortable to go live or to use Dynamics from that point. So once after going live, project implementation ends there. So it qualified in every step and client is going live. So its implementation part is done. There can be certain minor changes which has to be done. Maybe you can have different time frames for it, or you might have completed everything. Differs. So after that, what happens? That we have support contract. See, it's usual that client would go live and work on, but once after he goes live, he might need assistance on daily basis or different situations. He might need assistance because users will not have really good idea about Dynamics. So they only you have only given them some training on the various business activities they do. Suppose for a cash and bank management clerk, you would have given a training on only cash and bank management reconciliations, how to track the details and all. You don't have any other idea about the configurations, or if he might face any error during any transaction or reconciliation, he don't know how to clear it. Either if one of the developments will fail because of some situation, so they don't know how to fix it. So they would generally depend on the person who have implemented them or depend on somebody else. So implementation might stop here. They would go for a support contract with some other partner or some other company. So for support, they would look for anyone else, or generally they would depend on the same implementation partner because the designs they have done are usual to this particular company only who have implemented them, right? So in case of complications, they would generally reach out to better to reach out to or have a support contract with the same company. So because they know this design already, they are the one who have developed this. If you go for someone else, then they might have to again relook into all the design, or they might not understand the design as well. So there are chances. That's not so much hard that they might not understand the design, but still. So this will be there here, support contact subscription. So it can be with the same partner company who have implemented you, consulting company who have implemented you, or it can be another company, or it can be directly Microsoft, or they can directly subscribe to Microsoft. But the limitation is that Microsoft doesn't support the customizations. They only support the standard process that Microsoft have or Dynamics have. If the client is using the standard process and if there is any situation of where they are facing some issue, then Microsoft will support. But for your customizations or newly developed things, Microsoft doesn't really involve into supporting those aspects. But there are certain paid services by Microsoft wherein it also supports this fixing of the confusions because of customizations. So that is also there, but in the general support contract or subscription with Microsoft, Microsoft doesn't really support the developments. This is one step. This is also called as annual maintenance contract, if I would say. AMC. So this would be all about the various steps in implementation of a project. So I would say the functional consultant will work on these aspects. So this SD means solution document. Okay, I mean, what are the fits into Dynamics will be fit into Dynamics. So I'll send the script, guys. Don't worry. I'll just copy and paste it in the chat. No need to take screens. And so a consultant, as a functional consultant, we might be working in any of these aspects. You might be working either in implementation, you might be working in preparation of FRDs, FDD. Generally, the experienced people will work on documenting part usually. But as a consultant, you might be you should be ready enough to work on anything. So you either for configuring it, or if you want to test it again, if there is something newly developed, you might be a consultant in testing directly, so that you don't do anything else in implementation, or you don't even know about the project. You only know about designs and the deployment. So once the design is done, they will send you the FDD. You have to go through the FDD and write down some test cases. And once it is developed and deployed into Dynamics, according to the test cases you have written and the steps, you will follow and test it. If it passes, you will say this test case is passed. If it fails, you will create a bug and get it fixed with the development team, or follow up on that bug until it gets fixed. So that's generally the roles and responsibilities as a test consultant. So people would also be hired as a test consultant generally in a project. Coming to an implementation consultant, yeah, he can be placed in anything like in configurations or shifting the configurations from one company to another company. Again, loading the data, master data, or creation of master data, data migration, as well as bringing down the balances if he's a finance consultant. Then also doing this analysis, gap fit analysis, understanding how much is fitting into Dynamics, what is lacking into Dynamics. So implementation consultant usually works in these aspects. There can be a chance that you can work as a support consultant. Support consultant here, he'll come into place. He would generally doesn't know about implementation or testing. He don't work in it. Generally support the regular day-to-day issues of the client. So according to your understanding of how Dynamics function, looking into error which user is facing, you will give a resolution to it. Or maybe they come up with a situation which they have to achieve in Dynamics, you will suggest a workaround or a process which has to be followed. So as a support consultant, that would be your role. I mean, meeting the or giving resolutions for the day-to-day issues and challenges of the client. So either you can work in implementation or testing or support according to your nature of the job or the one that you choose. So that would be all about the steps involved in implementation of Dynamics. So if somebody asks in interview about this, you can explain it, maybe not in this detail, but at least the points, you're not missing anything. Clear, guys? Any confusion at any point in this? Anyone? Seems like a lot of silence. Is
No,
it?
no. Yeah.
No, it's clear, JP. Yeah, thanks.
Give. Then, yeah, let's discuss about one small thing so that we can wind up. We're already late, I know. I'm sorry for that. So different environments we have. Okay, we just call them as different environments in Dynamics. Environments, or what do I say? There is a name for it. I'm sorry. So clients would call it different names. Let me plug in my charger. Okay. So we have production. We have sandbox, which is also called as UAT sometimes. Then we have dev or development environment. So these are the three environments we have. Production environment is the main environment of the client in which he would generally record the main activities. Sandbox is a test environment. So if something has to be tested, first they'll go for sandbox and test it there. Or if they are confused about a process, they would first test in sandbox, and if it works fine, they will follow the same steps in production as well. So this is also called as UAT because this is the environment we generally give access to the business users for UAT testing. So they might either call it a sandbox environment or UAT environment. Okay, development environment is the third we have, wherein the developments are generally done. So the technical team will work on writing the code as well as developing it here in development environment, or the first design that is developed will be deployed into development environment. Once after it is being deployed into development, they'll test it in the development environment. If it qualifies, they'll move it into sandbox. If it qualifies, they'll move it into production like that, or they can directly move it from development to production also. So these are the three environments or the three servers we will be given by Dynamics once if the client subscribes to Dynamics. So keep these 3 points in mind as well. Okay. That would be all for today. Yeah, if you have any doubts, yeah, you can stay back and ask. If not, we can drop off. I'll be available for another 10 more minutes here. If you have any doubts, you can just stay back. I'll just stop the recording until here it's